For stitch pattern 3, we're going to be making these diamond shapes, and they are made in stockinette stitch, and there's a reverse stockinette stitch background. And there are a couple of things here. We've got some wrapped stitches that I'm going to show you how to do. And also we're going to go over the decreases and increases that help shape our diamonds. And then finally, I'll show you along our edges, there are a couple times we have to do some extra decreases, or up here, extra increases. And I'm going to show you these two increases that we only do once in the entire thing. I also want to point out, when you're working this pattern, there are 2 rows that are setup rows, rows 1 and 2. And then what you're going to repeat is from rows 3 to 22. So everything in the red box. This is also noted in the written directions. So you do what's in the red box twice, and then you come back and do just rows 3 and 4 to finish it out and put wraps on the tops of those last diamonds. Okay, so let's give it a whirl. So I've already done my setup rows here. And the first thing that we're going to play with is these wonderful wrapped stitches. So I'm going to purl over to those 4 stitches that are going to be wrapped, and then I'm going to move those 4 stitches to a cable needle. Let me move my yarn to the back here. There are many different types of cable needles. This just happened to be the one that was convenient for me. All right, so I've moved the stitches to a cable needle, and I'm going to wrap my yarn around the stitches on the cable needle counterclockwise, which means I start in back, and I'm going to do 3 whole wraps. That was 1, 2, 3, and I'll just tuck my needle back. And now I'm going to take those stitches and I'm going to knit them. And you can knit them directly from the cable needle. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, easy as pie. And there are those wraps. You don't want to pull them tight, but you don't want them to be dangling either. So just gently wrap them and it'll be fine. And now I'm going to finish out the row. On the back side, it's pretty easy. It's just going to be working in reverse stockinette or stockinette the whole way across. So here I'm going to knit 4 stitches, and then I'm going to purl 4, and now I'm going to knit 4. Okay, so on this next row, we're going to start splitting this group of stockinette stitches. We're going to split it into 2 parts. Like here on the pattern, it's going to split and go out in the opposite directions. And to do that, we're going to put some increases there in the middle. And every time we do an increase, we must also do a corresponding decrease. So we've got decreases on either side, and everything mirrors each other since they're all slanting in opposite directions. So let's show you what we're going to do here. So this first row, or first time, we're going to purl across to 1 stitch before the stockinette section, and now I am going to knit these 2 together, because that will give me a decrease that leans towards the right. Something's a little tight in there. All right, knit 2 together, and now I'm going to knit 1. And now we're to the spot where we're going to make our increases, okay? And this is the toughest spot because we actually have to make both of our make one right and our make one left in the same spot. So it's a little snug, but that's okay. So the first thing you want to do is use the tip of your left hand needle to lift up the bar between the stitches. And you saw I did that coming from the back of the work to the front. And now I'm going to use the tip of my right hand needle to get a little slack here at the front because I want to knit into the front of this stitch. All right, so I'm going to knit, insert the needle, and knit, and there was my first stitch. Okay, now I want to make one left in the same spot. So I'm going to use the tip of my left hand needle to pick up the bar again, but this time I'm going to go from the front to the back. Okay, and now instead of knitting into the front of the stitch, I'm going to knit in the back of the stitch. And I do that so that it twists this loop closed. If I were to knit in the front of that stitch, it would actually make a yarn over, or it would look like that. It would just look like a hole in the knitting, and I don't want a hole there. All right, so I knitted a stitch, and now I'm going to do a slip knit. This is the offsetting decrease so that I don't change my stitch count, and I'll purl to the end of the row. Okay, so now we're going to go back in the opposite direction and do the wrong side here. And this is just either working in stockinette or reverse stockinette, depending upon which particular columns in the pattern you're working. And there you go. You can start to see here we're starting to get a little bit of reverse stockinette in between and some separation between these parts of our diamonds. I'll do another row here, see if we can make that a little more defined. All right, so I'm going to purl 2, and now I'm going to knit 2 together, knit 1, and here is where I am going to make one right. So to make one right, I come in from behind and pick up that loop. And then, like I said, I use the tip of my right needle to get some slack so I have a place to put my needle. And then I knit that stitch as I normally would. And then I'm going to bring my yarn forward and purl 2. And now it's time to make one left. So I'm going to go from front to back to pick up that loop and then knit it through the back loop. I'm going to knit 1 and then slip knit to make the corresponding decrease. Okay, I'm going to do the back of that and then we'll take a look and see how that's forming. So I'm going to knit 2, purl 2, and now I'm going to knit 4. purl 2 and knit 2, and that is the end of the row. Now you can see here we're getting fewer stitches on the outside of our V, and we're increasing the number of stitches in reverse stockinette on the inside. And the bottom half of our diamond is forming. So exciting. All right. I toyed with the idea, and some of you more adventurous knitters may want to do this. I toyed with the idea of putting beads up here, somewhere in the center of the diamonds, because I really wanted something shimmery in here to go with the east-west divider, the actual sculpture this is based on. But when I started actually juggling the increases and the decreases and the wraps, I decided not to put in the beads and figured I can go back and sew some in later, or I can go without. But you do you, right? That's part of what this is all about. You do you. All right, I want to show you these two special increases. They happen up at the very edge. So one is knitting and then purling in the same stitch, and then the other one reverses that and does purl and then knit. And it looks like so. Let's do purl and then knit. No. Yeah. So we're going to purl. And then we're not going to drop that stitch off the left-hand needle. We're going to come back and knit. So I've got a purl and a knit in the same stitch. And that just gives me an increase. And we're doing that on the edge. I'm just going to work myself over to this other edge here. And then we will do the opposite and knit and then purl. All right, so it's the same type of thing. I'm going to insert the tip of my needle into the stitch, wrap it, and pull it through, but I'm not dropping the stitch off the left-hand needle. I'm going to pull my yarn, move my yarn to the front, and then insert my needle to purl and purl a stitch. And there we go. That was a knit and then purl, and we did a purl and then knit. And now I have 2 extra stitches on my needles because I didn't do any corresponding decreases, because I just wanted to show you those increases. All right, we are on to stitch pattern number 4.